Hi, I'm going to do the parenting tag or the teacher mum tag that I found through EJ Kafupul's channel. So thanks, EJ. I thought it was a really neat tag and I wanted to get stuck into it. So there are questions and they're listed in my description if you want to give them a go as well. But question number one is, how many kids do you have and how old are they? I've got one kid, a daughter, and she's 3.5 years old. Question number two, were you a parent first or a teacher first? I was a teacher first. I had my daughter fairly late in my 30s, and so I actually had a good decade of teaching across secondary and higher education contexts under my belt before I spawned her. Question number three, how has becoming a parent changed or influenced your teaching? And I've actually got the answer to this one down pat because I give this explanation at uni quite often since becoming a parent. And for me, you know, it's not that it's influenced my teaching that much. And I thought, EJ, your answer was pretty in line with what I was thinking to this as well, which was that it didn't really change my teaching, but what it has changed is that same sense that, you know, that person in front of you once was a little baby and someone does love them madly and dearly. And so it has helped me, I think, in some ways to not fear students in that same way that I used to. Not that I was like scary afraid of them. I wasn't, you know, they're students, but scared that I didn't really understand what made them tick. You know, as a younger teacher, especially my most recent experience of being a student was as a student myself. And so I was really thinking about their experience through that lens. And so to think about student experience through a parenting lens, I think demystifies some of what's going on and gives you a bit more bravery or courage to handle some situations. The other part of this story though that I do tell my students is this, and it's about when I was a teacher and we were having a big argument in the staff room one day. And it was one of those really icky, well, the argument was fine, but it was an icky topic. It was like private versus public schooling, which is just, it's a shit topic to get into at the best of times. But we were handling it well. But the thing that I didn't like about that conversation was that it went on and backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. And the teacher that I was talking to said to me, you know, you'll understand these issues better when you're a parent. And I was so taken aback by that and so hurt and angry about that idea that, you know, you couldn't possibly understand the complexities of the schooling system or educational dilemmas unless you were a parent. And I just thought, what if I don't ever have kids? What if I didn't want to have kids? Does that mean that I will never be as good a teacher as you, or I'll never understand things about schooling as well as you? Which was a real affront to me, and I still don't like the idea. And I can confidently say, hand on my heart, that I don't think any of my views about schooling have changed since becoming a parent. It really is a lot more about that empathy side of my practice and the ability to relate to the student at that, you know, community and personal level. Number four, do you send your kids to daycare during the breaks? Heck yes. Yes, I do. So people who watch my channel know that I was an English teacher, but now I'm working in higher education. And so what that means is we have, yes, a busy period and lower periods, like there are kind of cycles of ebbs and flows of work, but in terms of time away from the office or time away from that work context, we get 4 weeks of annual leave. And yeah, like daycare does shut for a few weeks of that. So I don't have to make that decision to bring her home because I know that there's going to be that common 3 or 4 weeks that she is there home with me. If I was teaching and I had those other kind of 2-week periods off of school holidays, I thought, well, imagine that, what would you do? And I really think I would still send her to daycare because for me, she's in there 3 days a week. She likes the routine. She likes the kids that she hangs out with there. And I really don't get a lot of personal time anymore. That's the one big thing about, you know, I think it's question something else, but it was about, you know, how's it influenced or challenged you? It's just there is no time anymore for me, really, as a parent of a very young child. Some people say that that gets better as they get older and you get more time back. Some people say that that is a lie and that teenagers are quite high maintenance and you never get your time back ever again. I'm waiting to find out which one is true. But if I had some breaks, like I do try and organize like a day out of each semester where she is in daycare and I actually take a rec day and I stay home because I just do need a bit of that time. So I think if I had more options to do that, I would actually take them up. Question 5, what advice would you give to someone who is about to have their first baby? EJ, you'd said buckle up, which was, you know, apt. I would give no advice. There is no advice you can give. Everyone's going to give you the advice, and you know, so much of it is conflicting, and until you actually live the experience and embody it yourself, I feel like a lot of the advice is just so abstract to the point of being useless. I've tried to think of what would be some really good practical advice, not so much about the emotions of it or the change of perspective, but I would say around work. So you will have that baby and you will probably have some period of parental leave, and then you'll have to make a decision after that whether to go back to work full time or whether to try and organise a return to part-time work. And that is just a whole nother world of its own. I always assumed that I would go back to full-time work after I took parental leave and that would just be really easy and normal. And for some people it is, and that's great. I've at the moment come back to 4 days a week, and I'm not sure that I could do the kinds of things that I do in the house anymore in terms of maintaining the family and also have a full-time teacher's load, whether that was school teaching or university teaching. Like if you're out there and you're doing that gig full-time, you know how many of your hours of spare time it eats up. So a lot of the responses I saw, I watched a couple of the other videos, talked about that battle to manage the time and the parent guilt or the mummy guilt that you feel when you can't give that time to the family. And I definitely feel that too, and I struggle with it too. So I would say get some knowledge around what your rights are in terms of returning to work part-time. And this is whether you're the mother or the father, because that's a choice that fathers can make too, actually, is to return to work part-time. In fact, you could both choose that, but it is hard. You know, employers talk about flexibility, and when the rubber hits the road, I know that the reality is it can be quite hard to either find a part-time gig or to negotiate your part-time-ness. But you have rights in that area, especially if you're in an ongoing role and returning to work. So contact your employer, contact your union, find out what your rights are, and think about whether you want to be part-time for a while and see how that goes. That last question was about what's most challenging or rewarding about being a teacher mum. And I don't know, I don't think about my identity actually as that composite, like teacher and parent. I feel like my identity's got a few other things in the mix besides those two things. So I actually found this the most challenging question on the list. I would say, and this is a bit, I don't know, a bit of a deep one to end on, but confronting my own mortality. You know, when you bring in a new life, it does hit home that there is a life cycle in progress and that yours is cycling along as well. So at the same time as having a child really grounded me in what I want to be accomplishing on the home front and in my personal life. You know, it's really easy as a teacher, I think, to slip into a kind of workaholic state where someone said once, you know, teaching takes up as much space as you let it. And so for some of us, that means it takes up all of our space until we learn how to manage that. So having a child did help me to get some perspective on how much I was overworking, which was good. But at the same time, it gave me this sense of urgency that I actually only have so many years left in my working life. I didn't really want to confront the life thing. So I chose to think about it as, you know, my working life. And so it did give me a sense of urgency for what I want to change for the world that I want to see her in. Not just the world that I wanted to see my students collectively in, but it gave it I think, more gravity to be so personally connected to one human who is little and watching her come into the world. So yeah, some perspective, but at the same time a sense of urgency, and those two hit up against each other all the time. So there you have it. Those are my answers to what it is like. Thank you to my friend Jo, who I'm in her house at the moment down in Melbourne. And I guess a final note on parenting teacher life is, if I was at home right now, there is no way I would have been able to make this video. I would have loved to do a kind of cute thing in my own kitchen or in my lounge room or in the backyard. And I've meaning to do a few vlogs like that. And the reality of home life with a 3-year-old is just that seems like such an impossible task right now. Bring on the years of her locking herself in her bedroom and listening to music, where I can just go and, you know, film some YouTube. No, I'm going to regret saying that later, I know. But yeah, so I am here making this video now because I am by myself and I've got some time, which is a treat. And this is what I'm using it with. So there you go.